Chapter 151. How could that be possible? Xiao Chong was currently banished from Z country because of the new head of the Xiao family, and in addition, Gu Jin was married to Mu Mingcheng. If so, how could anyone have any ill thoughts towards her cousin? But when Chengxin recalled the pool of blood, a flood of guilt and regret caused her to shut off any further thoughts, afraid that she might discover the cause. During those days, the Jing family resisted Mu Mingcheng's suppression by marrying someone from the Li family, but even that ended in vain. The Jing family's industry throughout the country shrunk at a visible speed and had quickly withdrawn from the ranks of the wealthy first class. Of course, the Li family was left dissatisfied since their family was dealt with considerable capital loss. Eventually, the head of the Li family came out of seclusion and issued a statement saying that the marriage with the Jing family will be annulled. He then personally visited the Mu family in order to make amends. However, the damage dealt upon their family was already great, plus they did not have any reliable successors to inherit the business. Their outcome in the future has yet to be known. The Jing family had nowhere to hide, and they had no clue as to why Mu Mingcheng refused to let them off. At this point, Senior Jing, who had been observing from the side, finally came to his senses. In order to preserve the Jing family, he repeatedly asked Mu Mingcheng why he was angry with Jing Hao, even if he could just tell them the reason. Then, a piece of information leaked from who knows where, saying that Mu Mingcheng's backlash against the Jing family was actually vengeance for being a target of assassination. Once the Jing family became aware of the rumors, they were shocked silly and straightaway started a secret investigation of its family members. Finally, they found something wrong with Jing Ruo's dealings. Fortunately, they found this out sooner than later. Otherwise, Senior Jing's life probably wouldn't last in a few more years. In their anger, the Jing family wanted to hand Jing Ruo over to the police, but she got wind of the news early and escaped. However, with the advancement of modern technology, where else can she run off to? Finally, the Jing family received a notice from the police that a hungry woman had been found in a bridge cave who had a striking resemblance to Jing Ruo. The finer details were unknown to outsiders, but Cheng Xin was well informed since Jing Hao scheduled to meet up with her. Perhaps there was still love and hate in her heart, but for whatever reason, she promised to meet him. After listening to him explain the matter eloquently, Cheng Xin laughed and burst into tears. See how ridiculous they are? Their feelings for each other was true. Their love was true, but compared to this affection, they loved themselves more after all. This so-called love had no value next to the self-interests they prioritized. After their separation, the Cheng family survived the crisis. It was just that Father Cheng's body was affected. After he was discharged from the hospital, he ran the family business for 2 years before handing it over to his daughter Cheng Xin to manage. During her first 2 years of taking charge, Cheng Xin often panicked and cried when things went awry. Gradually, she discovered that crying wouldn't solve any problems. The proud princess who was valued as a pearl in one's palm gradually learned the savvy means needed to survive in a dog-eat-dog business world. During that time, she gained some understanding of Jing Hao's train of thought. Cheng Xin was touched by his willingness to care for her and love her. But unfortunately, she really grew up and had lost the courage to love someone again. Cheng Xin read the document and signed it. Then a phone rang. It was her private cell phone. Hello, this is Cheng Xin speaking. May I know who's calling? Perhaps someone dialed the wrong number. She was about to hang up when a deep and familiar male voice came from the other end of the phone. Xin, it's me. Suddenly, Cheng Xin's eyes widened. Her indifferent eyes lost their calm, and just for a moment, she bloomed with the joy of a young girl. Chapter 152. Outside the maternity room at the hospital, there were several people passing to and fro. Xiao Chong stood a little farther away from the entrance, his head bowed down, while his eyebrows were wrinkled in worry. It had been more than 5 hours since Cheng Xin entered the delivery room, but there was still no movement. Xiao Chong once heard that when a woman is about to give birth, she wanders between the boundary of life and death. Cheng Xin had always been a delicate lady who never suffered hardship. If that was the case, then no. Xiao Chong forced himself to ignore such terrible guesses in his mind. Cheng Xin's pregnancy test revealed that she was in good condition, so there should certainly be no accident. But he couldn't help but worry. While Cheng Xin had been pregnant for the past 8 months, there would have been more time before the baby was born, if she had not accidentally fallen down the stairs this morning. It has often been said, 7 survives, but 8 may not make it. Xiao Chong's hands curled into tight fists and a thin layer of sweat covered his forehead. Jing Hao had suddenly left on a business trip abroad, leaving Cheng Xin, who was in critical condition, with no one to accompany her. Old Master Jing had died of an illness a year ago. Cheng Xin did not trust the Jing family's members, neither did she want her parents to worry, so she called him to accompany her and her baby. Upon hearing the news, Xiao Chong was both anxious and angry. How could Jing Hao do such a thing? His wife was pregnant with his 8-month-old child, and yet he has the nerve to go abroad on a business trip? Definitely not a qualified husband. Xiao Chong felt remorse for Cheng Xin. He stared at the delivery room for a while and hesitated for a moment before dialing the Cheng parents' number. When they heard that their only daughter had fallen down the stairs and was induced to give prematurely, they immediately left the company and hung up the phone, doing their best to rush over as quickly as possible. Half an hour later, they arrived at the hospital. Knowing that their treasured girl had been suffering for 5 hours without their son-in-law by her side, they felt some dissatisfaction towards Jinghao. Xiaochong nodded silently as he listened to Mother Cheng rant angrily about Jinghao. In his heart, he secretly cautioned himself that once Gujin becomes pregnant, he must temporarily leave the company to his father to manage while he stays by her side to take good care of her. However, based on Gujin's nature, she would definitely be more prudent and steady when she is with child. So even without him by her side, she would surely take good care of herself. Xiaochong's heart couldn't help but soften at the thought of having his own children. He had been married to Gujin for 5 years now. Whether it was his parents or his friends, all of them regarded her with much praise. Xiaochong was no longer young. When he recalled his deep infatuation for Chengxin in his youth, his heart would skip a beat, but only for a moment, as if everything had disappeared into the fog. On the contrary, Gujin's color had become more and more distinct in his mind. Sure enough, time can change most people. He had known her for a long time, and although he had no affection for her, she continued to stay by his side. Silently she stayed, and slowly, he began to get used to having her existence. Like the frog that stayed put in warm water until it boiled, he finally indulged in that warm water. After completely taking over the Xiao family business for more than a year, he had actively been preparing his wife for pregnancy. Especially after learning that Chengxin was pregnant, he had a greater sense of urgency to have a child. His parents also kept a close eye on them, and had mentioned it to the couple several times, both in public and in secret. Xiaochong considered himself to be a considerate husband who did not pressure his wife. It's all right if they don't have children now, they were still young. They can do with what they are now for the next 2 years. It's just that, for some reason, Gujin's earlier phone call made Xiaochong's heart feel uneasy. When Chengxin arrived at the hospital, her condition was in such an unstable state that he hung up in a hurry. Chapter 153. When Chengxin arrived at the hospital, her condition was in such an unstable state that Xiaochong hung up in a hurry. He'll just explain the situation to Gujin later when he goes back. Since his wife and Chengxin were such close friends, Gujin will surely understand him. Xiaochong's wrinkled brows slowly relaxed and a slight smile appeared on his lips. Suddenly, Xiaochong's heart skipped a beat, as if priceless something was lost. A sudden dizziness overcame him and his vision darkened. After a moment of confusion, everything returned to peace once again, as if the sudden pain just now was simply an illusion. At this time, the delivery room's door opened and a nurse walked out. Xiaochong tried to ignore that uncomfortable feeling and urgently asked, "Hello, excuse me, how is she?" The nurse glanced at him while wondering why this visitor was different from the other man who accompanied the pregnant woman for her prenatal examination. With a smile on her face, she replied, "She gave birth to a daughter. Both mother and daughter are doing well." Xiaochong breathed a sigh of relief. The Cheng parents joyfully smiled and quickly made their way towards the delivery room. The moment the child cried loudly, Jinghao arrived at the hallway of the hospital. The two men nodded to each other. Jinghao said thank you and bypassed Xiaochong to find his wife and daughter. Suddenly, Jinghao's footsteps stopped. He turned around, looked straight at the man, and said with a deep voice, "Xiaochong, you and Gujin should have a child too." Xiaochong's gaze stayed fixed for 2 seconds. His eyes focused at the door, where a family enjoyed a warm and joyful atmosphere. He lowered his head as the corner of his lips raised to a mocking smile, but his heart was now relaxed, as if he had finally let go of a heavy burden he had been carrying for a long time. But before he could truly smile, his cell phone rang again. He guessed it must be Gujin. Since Chengxin just gave birth to a daughter, he should share this good news with her. Xiaochong planned to wait here for 2 days until Chengxin returns home before he plans to return to Gujin. By then, he hoped to bring her the excitement of having a newborn so they can both have their own child soon. Suddenly, when he heard the person's reply on the other end of the line, Xiaochong's expression changed instantly. His eyes were wide with shock as he shook his head in disbelief. His unsteady hands dropped his cell phone, making a dull thud as it hit the floor. The policeman's calm and solemn voice echoed over and over again in his mind. 3 knives were stabbed into her lower abdomen, leaving a corpse with 2 dead men. He could only hear a buzz in his ears due to his shock, when he suddenly recalled the phone call from Gujin. He staggered over, picked up his phone, and checked on the recent calls. The last call was about 2 hours ago. Xiaochong kicked his cell phone far away as if it was something abhorrent, filled with bad luck. The hospital floor was clean, bright, and spotless. While the family in the delivery room were celebrating a new life, Xiaochong suddenly lost all of his strength and fell to the ground tragically, his eyes turning red. On the road, who knows how many red lights he had slipped past. Xiaochong's mind seemed blank all the way until he arrived. By then, the crime scene has already been sealed off. With a pale face, Xiaochong circled not too far away. He couldn't believe the news of Gu Jin's death. No, not only Gu Jin, but also their child. However, his hopes were shattered the next moment. Chapter 154. However, his hopes were shattered the next moment. In the distance, he saw his solemn parents-in-law who had lost all of their elegance and demeanor. Their backs were bent over as they supported each other, the grayness of the hair now noticeable. Xiaochong's feet could not move forward a step, as if his body became as heavy as a mountain. Sensing someone's presence, Gu Changsheng turned around and looked in his direction. This father's eyes turned red and teary when he recalled a scene with Gu Jin just a few days. Xiaochong went over to their side and whispered, "Dad, Mom." He tried to smile like he used to in front of them, but now he couldn't even manage a proper smile. Gu Changsheng sighed, patted Xiaochong on the shoulder, and after a moment of silence, left him with only one sentence. "You go and see her." Outside the dilapidated door, Xiaochong found the surroundings desolate and gloomy. The nearest cement road was hundreds of meters away. Gu Jin's body was covered with a white cloth, so pure and peaceful. In the end, his trembling fingertips did not have the courage to pull the cover aside. His eyes were fixed on a pool of blood that covered this corner of the house. The blood spread and stretched several feet until it accumulated another pool of blood by the door. The people who busily worked in the room soon noticed the man in a suit and leather shoes kneeling on the ground. His ruffled clothing and awkward posture couldn't hide his handsome appearance. After glancing at the man in surprise, they resumed their work once again. Xiaochong bent down and laughed, his body trembling. After laughing for a while, he stood up. Outside the house, the sun shone brightly. Xiaochong stood by the doorway, but he only felt cold all over. "Sir, your lady's brother has come for a visit." The servant opened the door carefully, and the pungent smell of alcohol emanated from the room. The servant could only sigh. Ever since Mr. Xiao came home that day, he shut himself in his room and never went out. 3 days later, his father called for someone to force the door open, only to find Xiaochong overdosed with alcohol. He rushed his son to the hospital for gastric lavage. But once Xiaochong regained consciousness, his demeanor was like that of a ghost's. If he couldn't get the alcohol he demanded, he would make trouble and smash things at home. Fearing that his son might hurt himself, Father Xiao ordered his men to give him drinks with low alcohol content. At this time, the servant waited outside the room for Xiaochong's reply, but there was only silence. The servant's heart felt bitter as he thought to himself, how can a good lady like her meet a kidnapper on the road? Based on Mr. Xiao's current appearance, he probably won't be leaving his room for a while. Just when he was about to turn around and leave, "Finally, have him wait, I'll be going down at once." Xiaochong actually replied, to the man's surprise, although his voice was hoarse. "Xiaochong, you bastard." As soon as Gu Teng saw him coming down the stairs, he grabbed the man's collar and punched him in the face. The servant went up to help him, but Xiaochong ordered him to stop. "Where were you when my sister went to the hospital? What the fuck were you doing?" Gu Teng smashed his face fiercely again. "Who is Cheng Xin? Why does it matter to you if she's giving birth to a child? When my sister was kidnapped by thieves, you hung up on her phone. Are you comfortable now that you have left a corpse and killed 2 lives? You accomplice." Xiaochong did not return his words or his punches. He let Gu Teng scold him and even felt that he had lashed too little. Once Gu Teng got bored fighting, he asked with a sneer, "My sister owes nothing to Cheng Xin. And yet, not only has she lived under her cousin's shadow all her life, even her own man cares more about Cheng Xin." Xiaochong's body was frozen stiff. After Gu Teng left, he sat on the sofa for a while. Xiaochong habitually looked to the balcony and was surprised to realize that the vase Gu Jin placed there had been changed. It's been a week since he has looked at his surroundings, and now the living room was redecorated with a new look. "You there? Come here." "What's the matter, sir?" "Who told you to change the vase there? Who dared?" Xiaochong pointed to the balcony with murderous eyes. His face seemed to turn blue from anger. The stunned servant replied, "Sir, it was you who broke it." When it suddenly dawned on Xiaochong, his hand slowly lowered, and he collapsed on the sofa. Soon, he ordered all of the servants to take 3 days off and no one was allowed to appear at the villa. After the servants have left, Xiaochong got up and walked to every corner of the villa. His heart was empty, and the light in his eyes grew dimmer and dimmer. After so many years together, he had very few memories with her. Even if he wanted to pretend to be affectionate with her now, there wasn't much to recall of their time together. He was simply a joke. What right does he have to look down on Jinghao? Overnight, the tea table in front of the sofa was filled up with empty bottles. Intoxicated with alcohol, he closed his eyes and vaguely saw a girl running and jumping on the lawn, calling, "Daddy, Daddy," while a gentle and beautiful woman chased after her, telling her to be careful. Xiaochong curved up his lips, revealing a smile that was more unsightly than crying. Chapter 155. When Gu Jin woke up again, it was in her junior year. Unlike last time, her rebirth this time around was more than 2 months ahead of schedule. Even after 3 days, Gu Jin was still baffled. It was truly a dream to have 2 rebirths, but that's what happened. She still had memories of her past life. After her death, her soul did not disappear, but rather witnessed everyone's ending. It turns out that when she was kidnapped, Xiaochong accompanied Cheng Xin during her childbirth at the hospital. Gu Jin's deep anger and unwillingness caused the air to fluctuate. To her surprise, a whirlpool suddenly appeared and sucked her in. The whirlpool's energy was so powerful that it caused her soul to fall into a coma. When she awakened, she found that she had returned to the age of 20, but before she could celebrate her rebirth, she discovered that her body was occupied by a foreign soul. Right when she was about to compete for the right to use her body, the instability of her soul and body caused her to fall into a coma once again. The friction between body and two souls caused their memories to converge, almost overwhelming her. Gu Jin woke up 3 months later and was shocked by the other person's memory. It turned out that the world she lived in was a novel whose female protagonist was Cheng Xin. The general descriptions in the book were almost identical to her experiences, except for her death. Gu Jin's mood was a bit complicated. Especially after seeing that Gu Jin and Mu Mingcheng's relationship, she lost her motivation to compete for this body. So what if she takes her body back now? If she got it back, she wouldn't do so well in her state. The other Gu Jin was also a kind girl. Not only did she feel remorse for taking over, she even thought of getting revenge on her behalf. To be honest, if Gu Jin was reborn just now, she might shrink in cowardice before Cheng Xin and Xiaochong. What's more, it seems that Xiaochong also experienced a rebirth somehow. Although her feelings for him completely dissipated after she learned of events following her death, she wasn't sure if she could cut through the mess easily. She recalled a voice that spoke to her in the dark. The man wished her a good ending and told her to do good at all times. Gu Jin thought she might have found the reason for her rebirth. "Wake up, little Jin." Cheng Xin opened the door with a smile, but her expression soon collapsed. "Oh my God, why haven't you got up yet?" she said in surprise. "We're going to the amusement with Jinghao today. Have you forgotten?" Gu Jin looked at Cheng Xin with complicated emotions. She did not enjoy going to these kinds of places, but she forced herself to go to make these two people happy. But now, she did not want to. Whether due to hate or dislike, after going through 2 lifetimes of being looked down on, she no longer wanted to live in resentment and unwillingness. Gu Jin quietly looked down and replied, "Sorry, I can't go today." "Don't be shy." Cheng Xin teasingly smiled and added, "Are you shy because Xiaochong is there too?" Gu Jin raised her head, looked at her calmly, and retorted for the first time, "I have nothing to do with him. He likes you, so don't try to pair him together with me in the future. The literature club has some errands for me, so I'm going to attend to it. You guys go and play." "That is not true. The one he likes is you." Cheng Xin's voice trailed off and she couldn't look straight in Gu Jin's direct stare. "All right, then I am off." Cheng Xin walked out in a daze, wondering why something did not feel quite right. But she did not think about it much, since she was going to hang out with Jinghao. It seems that saying no to Cheng Xin wasn't as difficult as Gu Jin thought. After imitating that other Gu Jin's speech and tone of voice when turning her cousin down, the heavy burden in her heart was lifted. Her happy mood stayed with her even after entering the conference room. As the vice president, she was very close with Tong Lin. If her past self did not care so much about him, the present her now felt uncomfortable knowing his thoughts. She tried to adjust her breathing as she spoke with the club members, but she couldn't help but turn red when occasionally making eye contact with Tong Lin. There was a certain history book that came to mind. The other Gu Jin did not have any value for this book, but the present Gu Jin knew of its significance. Back then, during the beginning of freshman year, she was at the library reading The History of the Ming Dynasty, when a boy with a soap fragrance walked up to the aisle and read out loud the name of the book with a smile. They exchanged a few words because of their similar hobbies, and Gu Jin spoke of her remorse for the collapse of Ming Dynasty. This time, at the end of the meeting, Gu Jin still remained in her seat as if pondering something. Suddenly, she realized that she and Tong Lin were the only ones left in the room. Gu Jin panicked for a moment and squeezed the bag in her hand. "Are you okay?" Tong Lin asked in a plain voice, but the look of concern couldn't be concealed in his eyes. Gu Jin was shocked. She has been brave once, so she can be brave once more. It shouldn't be too bad, right? Under Tong Lin's concerned stare, she whispered, "President Tong Lin, I recall that you were also interested in the Ming Dynasty's history. Can I ask you a few questions about it later?" Tong Lin was apparently surprised. Soon, his eyes brightened with a smile and he replied, "All right, there's a cafe nearby. Let's go there and talk about it."